you. We are going to have an amazing 2018-2019 academic year. For some of us, it seems kind of strange to say to many of you, welcome back. Many of us were here through the summer. But welcome back for those of you who have been away doing work in other locations, and for everybody that's been here through the summer with me, let's keep it going. Let's keep it going. So I have an idea, and I'm wondering if Nicole could come up just for a moment. We're going to do an introduction of Nicole in just a few moments, but I have an idea. Yeah, come on up, Nicole. I think it would be great, and people who spend way too much time with me during the day know that I have a thing about selfies. I thought it would be fun if Nicole and I took a selfies of each other together here, but we would capture all of you in the background waving, because I thought we could send this out to the students. I'm tweeting, and many of you are not following me. You should all be following me at GRC Pres Johnson, but that's okay. A lot of students are following me. I thought we could all wave, and we can tweet it out saying, we can't wait to see you next week. What do you think? All right. And we've got Phil here, who's going to try to actually take a real picture of the crowd. I don't know, do you need a seat? Or to stand? Okay. So he's going to take a picture of us taking the picture of all of us. All right, so let's see if we can do this. Okay, now I know I've learned that Nicole and I have complementary best sides, so we're going to switch our positions. We found this out yesterday, and she said, no, I need to be on this side. I said, oh, good, because this is way better side for me. She's like, that's good, because this is my better side. So we complement each other really well. We are going to take a selfie. And okay, so when I say ready, everybody wave, okay? Are we ready? Okay, my head looks way too big, Nicole. All right, here we go. Smile and wave. All right. Something that's photogenic will get tweeted eventually. All right. Thank you for humoring me. It's important, to connect with people. Okay, so I have the great pleasure of starting today out very briefly, and to get everybody ready for the day ahead. I do want to say thank you to all of you who are here today. This is an opportunity for us to continue our work that we had together last year in terms of town hall conversations. It's an opportunity for us to set the tone for this year. It's an opportunity for us to build community and reconnect with each other. So thank you, thank you, thank you. This institution works best when we're all connected. And I have the reminder of those ideas at your table. We call it the green piece, not to take a plagiaristic title, as a reminder of why we all matter and why we're all so important in the context of the future of our college and for our students. So today we are here to talk about intersections and how to even more effectively build inclusive and equitable learning environments. Apparently, it takes a village to build an opening day. And I have many people I would like to thank. Some of you might not be aware of this, and I have notes because I don't want to miss anybody's names. Last March, Jody Siegel was in my office. We were talking about any number of things and the One Book program and so on. And that was the beginning meeting that was the birth of today. So if it hadn't been for Jody Siegel, as we were talking about different books, and she said, have you read Nicole Mason's book, Born Bright? And I said, no, I haven't yet. And she said, you might want to look at that, might want to read that. And we were talking about how to get our One Book program more elevated in our faculty and staff and students' worlds, and also, though, to how we could optimize all the things that are going on in terms of our diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And thus, the Opening Day Planning Committee. And I would like to just mention to you how many people since March in varying levels of participation have helped make this day happen. We have seen Nicole Mason, first of all, because she's been on the phone with us since March, humoring us in terms of our process and thinking through the day and wanting to make sure that what she brought to us was where we were and what we would need to move forward in our work. But we have others, Andrew Tunjan, Bob Filson, Chitra Solomonson, Danny Chang, Elizabeth Rangel, Aaron Fernandez-Momer, Janie Haney, Jamie Fitzgerald, Jody Siegel, Joshua Gertzman, Joy Crawford, Julie Moore, Katie Cunyon, Leslie Kessler, Marcy Sims, Maricela Fletis-Lear. Wait, there's more. Marwa al-Musawi, Michael Moreno, Sweta Singh, Vic Bahal, Wendy Stewart, Shirley Bean, Anna Locke, Benjamin Lidolfi, Suzanne McCudden, Camilla Morgan, Deb Casey, Fia Eliason Creek, Rolita Izanu, George Frazier, Mark Barrington, Vivette Brewster, and Marshall Sampson. If I left anybody off, please make all the accusations and angry fingers at me later. But I want to also give a special thanks to some of those names. Jody Siegel, absolutely, and she is a primary architect of that resource page in your folder today, along with Vic and Marwa and Nicole, who provided information for you in terms of resource page. Aaron Hernandez-Momer has been working feverishly on different lecture series events. And what you'll also see in your folders today is a calendar of events for the fall term. There is more to come, and we will, as the fall term goes on, we will have information around the winter and spring events. There is a lot happening at our institution around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And really what that's about is being able to meet every single student, no matter where they are, and bring them to success. So there's a lot that we do, but oftentimes the communication of what we do gets kind of hard to get across. And people say, I never knew that was going to happen, and I wish I would have known about that event. I would have taken my class, or I would have gone to that talk. So you can thank those individuals in particular for that work. And is Michelle Fujimoto in the house? Is she here? Oh, I see. Okay. Let me tell you, all this nice layout and artwork and graphic design and so on, this has been Michelle Fujimoto. She has been on 24/7 with us, getting the last touches of things and having me email saying, hey, can I have a template for a PowerPoint for, like in a minute? And she has worked with the planning committee to put these graphics together. Thank you so much for that. College relations staff, on top of Michelle, we've got Phil and Joseph and Peter. Thank you for everything. Chris up in the conference services world, up there doing all kinds of stuff for us today. I forgot to list catering. For all the people who are working this building today, for our food and beverage, thank you, thank you, thank you. And then we always have the ones that catch all the last minute things that we forget about. So that's Suzanne again, and Wendy, and Cindy Rapier, Corlin Simmons, Camille Morgan, and Rhonda Dalton. So a lot of people have been involved with this. In the audience, who are our service award recipients for this year? Please stand. If you are receiving a service award this year from Green River College, all right. Their name tags, they have a special kind of name tag where they have years of service on their tag along with their name. As you know, we're having a special reception on Thursday at 3:30 in the Cascade Room to honor our Service Award recipients. Please make every effort to come to this event. We wanted it to be a standalone event. We wanted it to be an event where Board of Trustees members could also be present, and we can elevate the recognition of our individuals where some of you have been here 5, 10, 15, so on years. Some of you have been here for 35, 30. And I would assume and hope that those of you who are here for 5, 10, or 15, soon enough, you'll be here for 35. You have dedicated your lives, not just your time during the day, but your lives to this institution. Thank you so much for your service. We also have some new Green River faculty and staff Who are our new faculty and staff today? Please stand. Welcome to the college. Welcome to opening day. We hope to see you for many years to come. We also have our new Vice President for Instruction, Dr. Rolita Izanu. We also have a number of Board of Trustees with us today. We have Chair Sharon Navas. We have Trustee Cowan, Linda Cowan, and Trustee Tim Clark. And I know we have a foundation board member out there. Lynn Norman, where are you? Right here. All right. What's so significant about this day? We have shut this college down until 4 o'clock today to the public. The question is why? So who's in this room today? We have staff, we have trustees, we have foundation members, and we have faculty. But not only do we have full-time faculty, we have our part-time faculty. Can our part-time faculty please stand? If I'm correct, based on what I've been told, this is the first time part-time faculty have been included in an opening day. And they should be. Because understand, in the past 5 years, we've looked at some data. I think if we went further back, it would be similar. In the past 5 years, part-time faculty teach between 48% to 45% this year in all the courses that we offer per term. And it varies a bit, right? 48, 47, 46, 45. But nearly half of all the courses we teach at this institution are taught by part-time faculty. From a student's perspective, they could care less whether a person is part-time or full-time. All they know you as an instructor, their professor. So the status or categorization that we engage in from a business standpoint has no value or notion for the student. What they want is a responsive instructor. What they want is a class they learn in and they move forward in. So from a student's perspective, they might have in a particular term all part-time faculty. The only way that we are going to move this culture forward and improve in the ways that we say we are aiming to improve requires that we spend time not just with full-time faculty, but also part-time faculty. Think about this as a faculty community. I am so grateful for the part-time faculty to be here today, and I hope this is one of many activities and events that will include our part-time faculty. We're going to work on this as we go through the year. That's significant. That's significant. So what do we all have in common? Whether we're a staff person, a faculty member, administrator, trustee, foundation member, what we have in common is that we are here for the students. We say that we believe in our mission, that we aim to meet our vision as an institution. We get up in the morning, and the reason we have jobs, that we have the work we have, is because of the students. And what we're going to be talking about throughout the day is what it means to have a student-centered learning environment that produces equitable outcomes for all students. For all students. We've talked about town hall data throughout the year. We know we have differences in completion, we have differences in retention, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about that as our term goes on. What I'm hoping that we come away from today is a greater awareness and compassion for the students that we serve, and that will help us develop thoughtful, and strategic responses. And here's why. I have 10 years of enrollment data here. The blue line is our enrollment across the past 10 years. This is where we are right now. Our peak, obviously, was in the midst of the Great Recession. The red line shows our growth in students of color. We are now a majority students of color institution at 51%. So although our enrollment numbers will fluctuate, have fluctuated, although they're looking strong now, you see we kind of plateaued and we're on a bit of an upward turn, and we're moving in a positive direction for this fall. Stay tuned for that. And we've increased by 15% in terms of diversity. Our completion rates have been virtually flat across 10 years. For our first-time full-time students, we've gone from 31 to 32%. So essentially, no significant change in 10 years. And for all students, 24 to 26%. Essentially, stagnated. We need transformation. We do many things at this institution, all motivated and focused on good goals and hopes. There are many things that we are working on, we have worked on, faculty, student affairs staff. But there's more. Clearly there's more that we have to think about differently or approach differently because we're flat. And I don't say that as a way to take away enthusiasm. I say that as a challenge because we have done tremendous work. This institution has been a strong academic institution, is today, and will be even stronger in the future. But we have to think about why our completion rates have been flat for a decade despite what we're doing. Despite what we're doing. And we will have plenty of time to talk about that. Mark your calendar, State of the College Address, October 10th, 12 to 2. And we will have, next week, at the end of the week, I'll be sending out a communication to all of you with a lot of updates and messages, all positive, about what's happened this summer and what's to come this coming year from my office. And of course, I need to know what's happening in your worlds too. I want us to think about this not as change, but as growth. When you think about change, you oftentimes think about loss. Well, change means we're going to do something, which means I'm not going to be doing something. Don't think about it that way. I want us to think about transformation as growth. We gain, we evolve. This is an additive process. It's a positive evolution. And we will push each other to get to that highest level. I know we will. We have this past year. You've done it in the past too, and we will do it again in the future. But what are we here for today? We're here for 3 very specific goals. They're broad and general. They mean things that are different for each one of you in this room. We're talking about having time for community. We're talking about having opportunities to learn through listening to understand, not listen to respond. Listen to understand what we hear and what we share with each other. And we have to focus on our priorities. And there's one clear priority. It's our students. It's getting them here. It's keeping them here. It's completing them and meeting them where they are in all of their beautiful diversity. And that's why we have Dr. C. Nicole Mason with us today. I can't tell you how proud and honored I am to have the privilege to introduce her. And I don't want to leave anything out, so I actually have notes. C. Nicole Mason, PhD, is the author of Born Bright, A Young Girl's Journey from Nothing to Something in America from St. Martin's Press, and professor at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. She also currently serves as executive director of the Center for Research and Policy in the Public Interest at the New York Women's Foundation. Prior to this position, Dr. Mason served as executive director of the Women of Color Policy Network at New York University's Robert F. Wagner Graduate School of Public Service. There, she held the distinction of being one of the youngest scholar practitioners to lead a major U.S. research center or think tank. Dr. Mason is an Ascend Fellow at the Aspen Institute in Washington, D.C., and has written hundreds of articles on women, leadership development, and economic security. Her writing and commentary have been featured on MSNBC, CNN, NBC, CBS, Real Clear Politics, The Nation, The Washington Post, Marie Claire Magazine, The New York Times, The Progressive, Essence Magazine, The Root, The Miami Herald, Democracy Now!, and numerous NPR affiliates, among others. And one of my favorites, Dr. Mason delivered a well-received TED Talk at TED Women on the courage to disrupt and the gift of being difficult. I recommend it highly to all of you. You can Google it later and enjoy it like I have numerous times. Dr. Mason's spark for social change came about while volunteering her time at a local battered women's shelter in Washington, D.C. Before then, she never thought it was possible to make a career out of helping others or using one's voice to help bring about change. Your voice is bringing change. In addition to this information, Dr. Mason also thought it might be of interest to you to know that she is a mother of two precocious twins, Charlie and Parker, has a motorcycle license, can lay a hardwood floor. I'm going back to the motorcycle license because I remember that whole driving scene in your book about, I'm not sure, and lives by the motto, you must dance through life. You must dance through life. Please help me welcome Dr. C. Nicole Mason. I need to turn it on.
Am I good?
Yep.
Okay, great. So, good morning, good morning. I'm so happy to be here. So I want to thank Suzanne and Jody for bringing me here and inviting me. Jody for finding Born Bright and reading it and recommending it. And Suzanne for her leadership in making this day possible. I also want to thank Wendy for her graciousness and taking me to the drugstore last night to buy cold medicine and pantyhose. The two very important things there. When I accepted the invitation, I didn't quite know what I was getting myself into. Usually I fly in and fly back out, but here I believe I'm a part of something very special that's happening at Green River College. It's the beginning of something big, a sea change of sorts for the students here at the college that will change their lives and trajectory of those who walk through the doors. You're not only beginning to have the conversation about creating a more equitable and inclusive institution. I think people do that all the time. They begin these courageous conversations. But what I am excited about here is that you all are grappling with the how. How do we shift? How do we change our practices, behaviors, and collaborate across programs, departments, and silos to make it so? And I think that is the radical change, the radical work of change. And so I'm really grateful to be to play a small part in your journey. Yesterday, I spent some time on campus meeting students and meeting many of you in the room. I got to hear wonderful stories of how many of you arrived to Green River College and your passion for your work and students. I got to meet Erin, who told me about her life growing up on a farm in rural Iowa and how she worked 3 jobs to put herself through college. She told me the story about the rich kids she served while waiting tables and that they made fun of her for having to work, and how she swallowed that pain and continued on because she had a bigger vision for herself. Today, she has a beautiful family and is working here at Green River College alongside you all to ensure that students like her have the support they need and have the opportunity to dream. In her, I saw my own reflection and my own personal journey. It also confirmed what I know to be true, that a story is the shortest bridge between two people. This morning, you will have the opportunity to hear a little bit about my own story and also the stories of students. In hearing our stories, I invite you to reflect on your journey to here and how it might connect you to the people in this room and the larger project here at Green River of building a more equitable and inclusive campus community. I do not take for granted this platform to speak to you today. It's truly an honor and a privilege. In this current political moment where there's so much noise and where the truth of our daily realities can be hidden or made invisible, I feel very fortunate to be able to share my story and give you my thoughts on how we might deepen our connection and commitment to students and the larger community in an effort to ensure that those who come through the doors of Green River College, no matter how they got here, what skills they're missing, their background or experiences, that they leave out feeling whole, capable, seen, and most importantly, possess the skills or degrees necessary to make a better life for themselves and their families. I think there's an urgency to this moment that cannot be denied. The decisions that we make now about how to engage others and our colleagues and how we show up with the moral courage to support and protect and provide for those with less power, privilege, or ability will determine our future and whether we will become further disconnected or fully realize our shared humanity. I feel the weight of this responsibility every day, particularly as I work with and am connected to many vulnerable communities. Now more than ever, I'm feeling the need to be bold in my leadership and in my thinking about what is possible and what should be done. I'm not only thinking about the ways in which I can be an ally, but the ways in which I can take a stand and live my commitment to building a more just and equitable society. About 2 years ago, some of you have heard this story. About 2 years ago, I became the coach of my children's soccer team. At the time, I was the only woman coach in our division. And I know that you're wondering, and you look at me, although I do ride a motorcycle, I want to be very clear, I have never coached soccer in my life. Before each game, it's customary to greet the other coach to go over the rules. On more than one occasion, when I would walk out onto the field, the other coach would look over my head and ask, "Where's the coach for the other team? I can't seem to find him." "It's me," I would say calmly. Inside, though, I would be seething and vowed when we walked to our respective sidelines to kick some kiddie soccer ass. And we did. We were undefeated. Chaos soon ensued. Once a coach requested that we switch goalposts because he said the field was slanted, giving us an unfair advantage. At another time, we were reported to the league for excessive scoring. Up to that point, it seemed to be an unspoken rule that only men coached, and even if they too had never played soccer. I decided to become a coach because I wanted little girls and other moms to see me and know that it was not only possible to play, but to coach and lead a team. In this very small instance, I was being a disruptor. I was challenging the way that things had always been done. I believe that when we think about our day-to-day experiences in our lives, we can all find ways that we have been disruptors or have opened the doors for others so they might step more fully into their potential and into their power. In my time with you this morning, I want us to take a step back and interrogate our position as supporters, faculty, staff, and administrators, and ask ourselves, are we doing all that we can? Are we doing enough to support the students that come through our doors, sit in our classrooms, and visit us in our offices? Are we gatekeepers or waymakers? Is what we're doing in alignment with the needs of students? I think most of us would answer yes, but I want us to go a bit deeper. What does your yes mean? Is it a strong yes? By strong yes, I mean, do we wake up with the idea or challenge to move at least one student towards their goal of degree completion, or make Or do we make one phone call to an agency or an office to build a bridge or change a system? For me, some days it's yes, let's do this, I got it. And other days it's like, wow, this is really hard work. And I ask myself, am I doing the right thing? Or am I doing this right? Because nothing seems to be changing, or the needle is not moving fast enough. I want us also to think about the assumptions and biases hidden or out in the open and real and perceived that we carry with us as we're doing our work. To start, I want to share a passage for my most recent book entitled Born Bright. By way of background, I began writing the book several years ago, and it was supposed to be a policy book because I'm a political scientist and we're going to stick to the facts and I'm just going to tell you what's going on. But when I sent the book out to publishers, I included a small vignette about my mother and our family. She was a single mother, and we struggled to make ends meet. And the publisher said, well, the policy stuff is okay, but I think you should talk about that. You should talk about your life and your story, and how your life has influenced how you understand your work and what should be done. To convince me, she said, it's going to be easy. I mean, it's your life. You can just, write it and it'll be fine. It'll be great. And I said, okay, I think you're right. I think I'll do it. But going back to revisit my childhood and filtering it through the lens of my current work and trying to reconcile the two was one of the most difficult things I had ever done. And the publisher, my editor, after I went back to her and I said, this is really hard. She said, well, yeah, I knew it was hard, but, I believe that it was a story worth telling. And one of the things I want to say that I didn't write down is that I feel a tremendous amount of privilege in being able to share my story even here right now today, because I know that there's so many stories that go untold and so many struggles that we don't hear about that I believe deserve voice and airtime. So here we go. The first piece I want to share with you is called A Day of Reckoning. The chandelier with its dangling diamond-shaped cut glass seemed brighter than usual as I looked up at it from the stage. I surveyed the audience consisting of the usual lot of do-gooders, social workers, politicians, and policy advocates. I jotted systems down in all caps and underlined it twice. The oversized room was elegant, the tables dressed in white linens, and it had the good chairs, the ones with the cushiony carpet-like bottoms. I was there to talk about poverty. I had delivered some version of this same speech nearly a dozen times in the past year. I barely had to prepare. Each time I gave the talk, polite applause circled the room, and I was flooded with invitations to speak at the next event. I knew just what to say not to ruffle any feathers. Stronger programs, more money, stricter rules, and the development of life skills for the impoverished. However, I was growing uneasy with the lie. What we were saying worked, did not. When my turn came, rather than give my usual spiel, I wondered out loud whether or not it was the systems that were broken rather than the people. I spoke about the need to look at institutions and structures in society and in the communities that impede rather than support self-sufficiency and economic mobility for families and individuals. Standing behind the podium in my nicely tailored suit, I felt safe saying what I'd been thinking for so long. I was the director of a research center at NYU. I felt comforted by the position and believed that perhaps I would be heard. I was an authority. During the question and answer segment of the program, a woman stood up and identified herself as a social worker employed at one of the many agencies scattered throughout the city. This comment is for you, Dr. Mason, she said. While she agreed that the systems did need some tinkering, she opined that what was really missing from the equation was individual responsibility and that people needed to help themselves. A flash of heat washed over my body as I realized she was talking about me. In that moment, I was transported back to the countless hours I spent as a child waiting with my mother for social services in oversized rooms in unmarked city buildings. At the break of dawn, we rose to catch several buses, only to be told to come back another day because we were missing some document or that our application was still under review. For their part, the social workers seemed contemptuous and treated us as if they were doing us a favor by allowing us to receive ration-sized aid. Undeterred, we would repeat the trip the following day. "That's not true," is all I could muster before a skinny white man with wiry glasses began to speak. "I agree with the woman over there," he said, pointing in the direction of the woman who had challenged me. "There are programs out there, and the women, I mean families, are not doing their part to better their situation. I see it every day." As I scanned the room, the sea of white faces with specks of color here and there seemed to agree with them. There was no dissent, only stillness. My stomach churned as I shuffled my papers. My eyes darted across the panel for help. Was anyone going to say something? Why hadn't I just stuck to my notes? When I did, everything went well and the narrative remained intact. By narrative, I mean the stories that we all have in our heads about the lives of poor people, their behavior, and the reasons for their circumstances. In this forum, I was not only disrupting that narrative, but also challenging the financial investments, institutions, and structures predicated upon an understanding of the poor as lazy, infantile, morally corrupt, and in need of direction and supervision. It was the narrative that consciously and unconsciously, most of us in the room were responsible for perpetuating in some form or another through our work as advocates, practitioners, and legislators. I swallowed hard. I did the right thing. I'm the beneficiary of many of the programs that we're talking about here today. I attended Head Start. I was involved in after-school programs. I'm the first person in my family to graduate from high school, to attend college, and to receive a PhD. By now, my voice was shaking. I was having in public the private conversation I reserved for my first-generation Black and Latino colleagues who had successfully navigated their way out of poverty and into the middle class, and who had a deep understanding of the journey from there to here. In this room, these people were strangers. But I'm only one person, I continued. Growing up, I knew many kids in my neighborhood who were smarter and more capable than me, and they didn't make it out. Many have been killed, gone to prison, and are living hand to mouth or otherwise on the margins of society. Should I blame them or the systems that only allow a few of us out at a time? The room was pregnant with silence. I couldn't take it back. I felt like an intruder and exposed. In these type of professional settings, my experiences with hunger, poverty, and episodic homelessness often go undetected. It's assumed that I'm just like everyone else, an advocate, a policy expert, or an academic. Typically, when a woman is invited to tell her story during these panels or meetings, it feels voyeuristic and a little slimy, like a performance. Her story has a perfect, predictable arc. She was lost, and then she was found by one of the many social service agencies in the city. She changed her behavior, became a better mother, and although she still struggles to make ends meet, she's on her way to economic prosperity. Her story is meant to inspire, to whip up emotions, and to make the people in the audience feel good about themselves and their work. It's not meant to challenge or change how we make policies or how we shift how poor people in our communities, our cities, or in the larger society are perceived. There's also a clear separation between her and the experts on the stage. They, not she, are deciding what should be done. Here I was, blurring that line. I had firsthand knowledge of the messiness of poverty and the feeling the poor internalized from birth, like the belief that our very existence is a burden on society. The collapse of this boundary made me uncomfortable. I had worked hard to disguise my beginning in life, from the decision to change my name during my first week of college, to the effort of erasing phrases like can't and fence to go from my vocabulary. I had succeeded in creating the perfect, impenetrable middle-class mask. Now it was off. I wanted to share this passage because I believe what it does is ask us to question and interrogate our own position in our work, as well as our assumptions and biases about the students we serve or work with that may be embedded in our ways of operating and the strategies we employ to help them move through the college. Again, it also begs the questions, are we doing enough? Is what we're doing working? Is this the right program, strategy, and is it rooted in the experiences of the students that come through our doors? Am I seeing the whole person and the complexity of their life, or am I fitting the person into a predetermined narrative of what's possible for people like them? I think these are the questions that we need to begin to ask with fierce urgency. The answers will change how we do our work. Next, I want to share or talk about the importance of being seen and belonging. Regardless of who you are and where you come from, everyone wants to know, do you see me and do I matter? The first person to see me was my second grade teacher, Miss Slaughter. She was the first person to tell me that I was smart and ask me what I wanted to be when I grow up. Although I didn't have the answer of what I wanted to be when I grew up, her ability to see me changed the trajectory of my life. From then on, I not only believed I was smart, but I also believed that I was capable. When students walk through our doors, they are wondering, do you see me? Do I belong here? From students who come from adverse backgrounds, these questions hold considerable weight and meaning. For many of them, they have overcome so many hurdles and obstacles and been told in many different ways that they don't belong and that they're invisible. So much so that when they finally arrived, they are often at their most vulnerable and wondering if this can be a place of refuge, safety, and a place of belonging. I don't believe there's a secret formula to student success and retention. If students feel seen, valued, supported, and see themselves reflected in the institutional culture and can envision and see the finish line, whatever it may be, they will stay. If they don't, they will not. And it's because we all want to be seen and be a part of something that we feel very connected to. That's why creating a student-centered culture is so important and critical to student success and retention. A student-centered culture places the diverse lived experiences and needs of students at the center of conversations and efforts aimed at effectiveness. To become more student-centered and to reach institutional goals, we might need to employ a wide variety of educational methods, from modifying assignments and instructional strategies in the classroom to entirely redesigning the student experience and their connection to the college. Next, I'd like to talk about people power and the power we all have to change the course and trajectory of someone's life with small, deliberate acts of kindness and generosity. At the age of 17, I left home to live with my paternal grandmother in Las Vegas, Nevada. I attended school during the day and worked 40 hours at night in a food court in a local casino. I knew I wanted to go to college, but had no clue how to get there. Up to that point, I couldn't have told you the difference between an Ivy League school, state-level school, or community college, let alone how to write a standout college essay. Back in my hometown of California, there was a special education teacher, Miss Bowman, who had a reputation for getting kids like me into college. Although I had moved away, I was convinced that she could help me. I also didn't think she liked me very much because she called me overzealous at one point. But I'm stubborn and difficult, so I just kept poking her. On her advice, I applied to and was accepted to Howard University. When I shared the good news with my family, a relative was quick to point out what I could not see at the time. I had no way to pay for it, and I was crushed. The letter that moments earlier seemed like a golden ticket became a heavy weight in my hand. For the next month or so, I used the payphone across the street from my high school to contact my teacher back home in California for help. This is before cell phones. On most days, I left a message, and on other days, I waited patiently on hold until the bell for the next class rang. Frustrated that time was running out, I boarded a Greyhound bus back to my old high school in California during the wee hours of the morning. Before the first bell rang, I was standing in the doorway of Miss Bowman's classroom begging her for help. I told her that I'd been accepted, but had no idea how I was going to pay for it. Needless to say, she was stunned. I was supposed to be in a similar classroom 4 hours away. Seeing the urgency in my eyes, she asked me to step out of the classroom while she made a phone call. When she returned, she announced that I had received a full merit scholarship to Howard. I made it home that evening just in time for my shift at the food court. That summer, I boarded a plane with $200 in my pocket for Howard University, believing it would be enough for a lamp for my dorm room, textbooks, and food. It wasn't. It was my first time on an airplane and outside of my community in any significant way. I wanted to share this story with you for two reasons. The first is that if it wasn't for Ms. Bowman and her love for little black girls and boys like me that really had no chance or clear pathway out, I would not be here standing before you here today. She was doing her part in her own way to ensure that we did not fall through the cracks. I believe that we all have the power to be Ms. Bowman in our communities and in our own work. She picked up the phone and made the call. It was a small act that yielded life-changing results. When I showed up to her doorstep or to her classroom, she didn't hesitate. She didn't ask me a bunch of technical or bureaucratic questions. She didn't question the reasons why I wanted to go and move across the country. She just knew what to do, and it saved my life. The other is that it's been nearly 2 decades since I boarded that plane, and as I talk to you, not much has changed about the condition of many of the communities, Compton, Inglewood, and San Bernardino, California, that I called home as a child. What's true is that the public schools in many of my old neighborhoods are in far worse condition than they were before the passage of Brown versus the Board of Education, and more segregated than ever. And the achievement gap, despite efforts, continues to widen or remain unchanged. Recently, there's been a lot of conversation about the role of grit and resilience on life outcomes. It's the idea that our success in life is much less shaped by how smart we are or even our geography, but by learning self-control, resiliency, optimism, and of course, grit. Grit and resilience, while helpful, will not end poverty or ensure that someone who starts at the bottom of the totem pole eventually makes it up to the top. We know that our ability to succeed is much less determined by our grit and determination than it is by our zip code and the families that we're born into. And I know this firsthand. As I said before, I knew many kids much smarter than me that never made it to college. And it wasn't because they didn't try hard enough or because they did bad things, but because they lacked the resources, information, or attended poor quality schools. I also lived next door to families that worked 40 or more hours per week that never seemed to make ends meet. A few of us, the lucky ones, will be brave enough to navigate broken systems over and over again until we reach the other side. But many of us will not, and I don't believe they should have to. We need to build more connected communities. Connected communities are those that have the necessary preconditions for individuals and families to achieve full economic security from early childhood on. These are communities with strong schools, vibrant community institutions, including hospitals, access to necessary resources, and bridging opportunities. They also have lower rates of violence, incarceration, arrest, and unemployment. And they have grocery stores and banks, and families and people aren't worried about where their next meal is coming from. All of these things come together like a puzzle to create the necessary conditions under which people are able to pursue opportunities and reach their full potential without harm, stress, or worry. Across the United States, communities and neighborhoods of concentrated poverty are more likely to be disconnected, meaning that the conditions of the community are not set up to help people succeed. They are filled with landmines, obstacles, and hurdles, seemingly meant to do the very opposite. So it's not wholly about individual behavior or effort, it's also structural and institutional. If you're worried about securing the basics, housing, food, education, staying safe, you don't have the time and space to dream. You just don't have it. In a real sense, poverty itself, including the conditions created as a result of it, is the #1 barrier to escaping poverty. And for many, it's like swimming upstream. I believe that we must create stronger communities and provide the scaffolding to allow people to make mistakes and to know that those mistakes are part of the journey and not the end. The work that you're doing here is not disconnected from the communities that surround and are a part of Green River College. When students come through the door and are underprepared academically, when they are grappling with the past and present trauma that prevents them from attending class or engaging fully, or when students are hungry or homeless, we're talking about the impact of community on one's ability to complete their degree or credential. It's all connected. And the time I have left, I want to return to where I began about the need for disruptors and waymakers. I believe that we all have points of privilege and disadvantage in our society. As a Black woman, while I've certainly experienced racial and gender discrimination, lately I've been thinking about my citizenship privilege and how freely it allows me to move across national and global boundaries. This is made more poignant here at Green River College, where many students are not only figuring out how to become successful students, but also learning to navigate new cultural and societal rules, also in a culture that has become increasingly more hostile to immigrants. I'm a single mom by choice to they're going to be 9-year-old twins named Charlie and Parker. My children, fortunately, are living dramatically different lives from the one I lived as a child and those of nearly 21 million children who live in poverty in the US. Thankfully, they've never had to experience hunger, homelessness, or direct or indirect violence, and they generally have their emotional and physical needs met on a daily basis. They also attend a high-performing and well-resourced public school in our community where I volunteer my time regularly. In a casual conversation with one of the teachers at their school, I learned about a homeless student who was having trouble focusing and concentrating in class. He, along with his siblings and mothers, lived in one of the local shelters in the city. In a kindergarten, he was already so far behind and needed extra support, much more than the teacher could give. The sharp contrast between the lives of my children and that of their classmates was palpable to me. I believed he deserved the same chances, supports, and opportunities as my children. He was already slipping through the cracks of multiple systems. I think the question for me and for all of us is, how do we work to make sure that all children have what they need to be successful and to thrive? I think that we're being dishonest when we say that the homeless child is as well positioned for success and opportunity as the middle and upper middle class child. And also thinking about when students enter here, whether or not, because they're here, that means that they're going to make it out and be successful in the same way that students who enter who are in a different social and economic position or class. I believe that we have to look beyond our immediate comfort zones and the comfort that comes from knowing that we are safe, economically secure, in good health, and look to join and build where there are deficits, disparities, or people and children and students who are going without. And if your community looks anything like mine, you don't have to look far. When I think about the important work that you all are undertaking here at Green River, I believe that it truly has the power to transform lives. Not only the lives of students that walk through the doors, but their family and entire communities. You all are part of a much larger project of creating a more equitable and level playing field. The kind of disruption where we're actively seeking to change systems and institutions to meet the needs of the most vulnerable among us is the most important, because it requires that we work to understand the lives and experiences of others. In closing, I just want to say that when I was a little girl, if anyone had told me that I would be here speaking to you today, I would not have believed him. As a brown-skinned girl born to a teenage mother in Los Angeles, California, the expectations for my life were carved out before I could ever begin to imagine what I wanted for myself. I suppose that this is true for all children, including those born into privilege. Our environment, our homes, our schools and communities, along with our primary caregivers and daily interactions with the outside world, signal to us what we can expect to become or how far we can go in life. There was a low bar for my success, and I was expected to be what I saw and not aim higher. However, it was the people along the way, like many of you in the audience, that helped me to become who I am today. A mother, a professor, a doctor, and most importantly, a person who believes that we're all connected and that we all have a responsibility, even when we're doing well or have succeeded, to reach back and to help others. We're all in this together. Thank you so much.
So what we're going to do now, there's some microphones in the back by each staircase, and we might even have one that can rove, yes, around down here in the pit area. We want to have an opportunity for anyone in the audience that would like to ask a question of Dr. Mason. And take your time to get there. I'll be down in the pit. Microphones on each side. Do we have a question down here? Yes.
Dr. Mason, one of the challenges all urban communities face is a growing homeless population and the ability to construct a support system that allows them to take the risks. Suggestions on things that we should be looking at.
In terms of the homeless population?
In terms of children in homeless populations and their ability to advance through education.
Well, I think the most important thing is stabilizing the family and making sure that the parents, whether it's a single mom or mom and dad, have the resources they need to be able to provide for the child. So that includes some of the work that's happening here at Green River College in terms of bringing workforce development, the early care and education programs, and all the other things, the scaffolding that families need so that their children are able to be stabilized. So I think that's the first step, so stabilizing families, but then also being really serious about dedicating resources, whether it's at the city level, state level, or institutional level, to addressing the issue. When I think about homelessness, especially in cities like, Seattle, San Francisco, New York City, it just really baffles me because of the wealth in those communities. For people to be living in $1 million homes or plus, and then around the corner, there are people who are living without. So I do think there needs to be some reconciliation and honesty about how resources are being allocated in cities.
Question in the back.
My question is, even when we're highly aware of the problematic narratives that kind of undergird what can sort of become very traditional approaches, I guess it's very easy to fall back into patterns, to not recognize the ways in which we're reinstantiating those narratives, even when we think we're doing the harder work. Do you have any recommendations for how to kind of stay vigilant in the day-to-day and how to work with students in a way that is more aware of one's own tendency to remake the known narratives?
Well, I think that's really a great question, because I think, especially if we've been, you do this work for a long time and you do it day in and day out, there's a default position. And especially when you have a line of students that you work with every day. So for me, I think it's about going internal and reflecting and thinking about, what's going on, taking a step back and looking at am I really doing the work that I set out to do? Am I really helping students to move? And some students are harder to move than others. And so thinking about how the systems are set up to maybe perhaps serve the default student and not the student that actually comes through the door, and thinking about that. I think the other thing is staying in conversation with your colleagues and having conversations about the students and what's going on, and asking and checking in, is this working? Do you think that this is right? And I think there's a tendency, because we're in our own silos, to be well, this is right, this is how it's been done. But getting feedback from other people who may not be in your program or your area to check in and say, is this working? If I do this, is this going to make your job a little bit harder? And really, again, the cross collaboration and awareness is really important.
Question in the front.
Hi, Nicole.
Hello.
Thank you for being here. So you talked about navigating the system as a person of color, someone living in the margins, and how you made it to where you are. Can you talk about when you ran into barriers and maybe when you felt like giving up, and what did you do to overcome that? And what would you suggest for those of us who want to move forward in our careers, how we should get there with regards to mentorship and maybe leadership programs and that sort of thing, and how to stay resilient?
That's a really good question. So, obviously I was difficult. I did say that, or Suzanne did say that. And so, I think for me, the key was being really persistent and dogged. I was told in a lot of different ways from a very early age about how far I could go, and just had a different vision for myself. I don't know where it came from, but just knew that, again, I thought I was smart, and it was only because that woman said I was smart. I don't think I mean, maybe I'm not really smart, maybe I am just dogged, but I just, I just held on to that belief, and so when things got hard, I knew that there was something that I could fall back on, and whether it was the smartness. And we moved around a lot, and every time I went to a new school, I got tracked out of AP classes, And then so if I came in September, by November I was back in. And it was nothing except for the persistence and wanting to be someplace where I was told I shouldn't be. And what I find so disheartening about that is that not everybody has that doggedness, Some people hear no, and that's it. And they accept those limitations. And so when I'm thinking about the landmines that, students here at Green River College or elsewhere face, I think one of our responsibilities is to clear those hurdles so that they can walk the path that's free and clear, so they don't have to negotiate and navigate and figure out and jump over and, because I don't think people should have to be superhuman, because that's really essentially what you have to be, and extraordinary, because I think that there are some people who, and we know them, who are not the brightest, who end up at the top of the, the heap. And that's in part because obstacles have been clear for them. So.
Question in the back. Either Mike.
Your remarks have been, generally and quite appropriately aimed at kind of a very macro level, the larger structure of society and institutions and bureaucracies and so on. And consequently, they seem more aimed at policymakers, Washington, D.C., or in Olympia, or Dr. Johnson, or however. But on the more micro level, in the classroom, I'm a faculty member, so in the classroom, what would you have to say about what goes on there?
Well, I'll thank you for that. So I think this is all real time, and I think that the piece that I mentioned about being seen and being visible is really important, especially in the classroom. I was fortunate to go to Howard University, and so I did feel very seen, and I felt very visible. And my experiences were reflected back to me. When I went to graduate school, that was not the case. I did not feel seen, and I did not feel seen, and I didn't feel visible, and I frankly felt like I was not prepared. There was a professor, Dr. Fred Alford, I always remember names. I was sitting in the classroom, it was a political philosophy class, and I would never raise my hand or talk. And I was the only black woman or student of color in the class, and only like maybe 2 in the program. And he said, Nicole, what do you think? I was like, what? What do I think? He said, what do you think about, I don't know what we were talking about. And I, said what I thought, and he affirmed it. And I felt seen, and I felt visible, and I felt like he saw that I was struggling. Even though I wouldn't have described it as struggling, I would have described it as not being secure in terms of, did I read the right thing, or did I interpret it right? And so I think in the classroom, it's making the space for those people who might be feeling unseen, for them to enter the space and enter the classroom. And that might mean shifting the discussion. It might be entering the discussion in a different way, bringing in, even when I'm teaching, bringing in things from popular culture or stories that may seem like they're disconnected from whatever the material we're talking about, but figuring out how it does connect up to the students in a different way.
So you didn't feel singled out or put on the spot?
No, and I do that. It was a very short story, because I thought about, when I was preparing today, I thought about Dr. Alfred, and then I thought about when I was at Spelman. I was a visiting professor at Spelman for 2 years in Atlanta. There was a student who, she was black, but she had come from a predominantly white high school and community, and so she didn't feel like she fit in. And she would come. She was super smart and very bright, but she was contemplating leaving the school because she didn't feel like she belonged. And I said to her, she goes, well, I'm thinking about leaving. I said, Kendall, I see you every time you come into the classroom. I think you're really smart, and I love your hats. She used to always wear hats. And we developed a rapport, and she stayed. She ended up staying, and she did really well. And now she's in graduate school at, I think it's Vassar, and she's now becoming a political scientist. And so I just think that those are those very tiny touchstone moments, or moments where, become really deciding, and it's very small. It's just a small act. But it all comes down to, I think, do you see me? Do I belong? Are we connected? Or am I just sitting here wasting time in class and falling asleep? You know how they put the head on the desk, But even those kids, I wake up, and say, hey, listen, sleep somewhere else, But I think it's great.
Question in the back, and then Marcel.
Hi, thank you so much for sharing your story and encouraging us. As an individual, I feel really grateful to be in the midst of everyone here that really wants to make a difference for each individual student. And your comment about, are we gatekeepers or Waymakers just really resonates with me. But I've got a question on a more personal level. My husband refers to me as a poopster, but he uses a different word. What is your advice or suggestions as we are out in the community, whether talking to a neighbor? I believe each one of us is capable of making a difference. What can be said? What can we do to get the attention of a neighbor to make a difference for each one of the students and their families? I'm just curious from your experience if you have any suggestions. Thank you.
For me, I think it's just about doing the work and leading by example. And I think that, especially in this moment, it's really hard to have conversations even with our neighbors about issues like this. And so it takes a lot of, courage to even question and disrupt what we now see as normal. And so I think staying engaged and keep showing up. I think the change, change is sometimes incremental, but it just, if we all keep doing it, then it eventually happens. And even when I think about the work here that you're undertaking at Green River, the truth of the matter is that we are talking about, a culture that's embedded and has been long existing, but the truth of the matter is that it's made of people. And so if it's made of people and it's made of us, then we're the ones who are holding the culture and we're the ones who have the power to change it.
Thank you.
Marcela, it's over.
Hi, thank you for being here. My name is Maricela, and I work in the Humanities Division. And as I think about the micro level and what can we do in the classroom, I was just trying to reflect on some of the challenges we face, not only in terms of seeing the students, but in working individually with the students. So we have classrooms that are anywhere from 28 to 34 or more students. We don't have assistants with us in the classrooms. We have, as it was pointed at the beginning, a significant portion of our faculty who are adjunct and who have to run from here to another college to teach. We have, because as full-time faculty, the full-time faculty is fairly small compared to the large number of students. We have a huge amount of commitments in terms of committee work and et cetera, that get into the way of actually meeting with the students. We have in the classroom a huge diversity of students in every possible way. So for instance, when I teach a literature class, I have students who come to my class who cannot read, literally cannot read, even if they already have the prerequisite of having passed English 100, right? But they really cannot read in a critical way, in an academic way. How can I, as an instructor who is trying to teach them literature and in the complex way in which it should be taught at a college level class, how can I help those students who cannot read, who cannot write, right? Who have made it to college with all the deficiencies of their high school and elementary school and all the difficulties in their life. We have a great writing center, great public speaking center, right? But again, those students who have made it already to college without that ability, right? So it seems like a huge barrier, right? Given the fact that, I want to come to the classroom and feel like I'm in a family, but I have a very large number of students, all of them with different levels, right? How do you navigate that? Is my, one of the biggest challenges I think that we face, because again, not only the different levels, the large number of students in the classroom, and I know, of course, if we compared 34 students in a classroom with 100 or 300 in a lecture hall in other universities, but they have then seminar and meetings in very small, but we don't have that capacity. So how to navigate all these difficulties? I know this is, a very large question, but.
That's a very large question, and I think, as a faculty, member or, been on faculty before, I think one of the most heartbreaking things that I have experienced is when students come in and they've been passed along and, for your standards, when they come to you, they're not prepared at all. And so I think that first of all, that's heartbreaking. When I experience that, or when I have students who come my way, I try to, whenever I see their papers or whenever we're in conversation, to add a little bit more support and try to work with them in the limited amount of time that I have. So whether it's, I'm sure you all have done the tearing up of a paper, where you go and you write comments and some students take that as an offer to say, hey, what's going on? Maybe I need a little bit more support. And others don't take it and say, why did I get an F? Or why isn't this, why didn't I receive a better grade? Because they've been passed along. I think it's a very complex system, and that's when we talk about the need for what happens before they get to Green River College is really, really critically important. And so when we talk about the community connections and making sure that the K-12 system is working, so when kids get to you, they're not so deficient where you can't even teach the literature because you're worried that they don't even understand it and they can't think critically about it. I think one of the best things is, again, you know that there are resources and you connect them, but I think becoming more connected in like a net for students so that the onus is not just on you to help support the student, that there's a wraparound or other support services or other professors that you can link up with and to who might be able to provide additional support to the student. I just think that it's a very complex issue, and if you had to ask me, when I think about the reason why students don't stay, that's part of the reason, because it is really hard. It's really hard, especially when you feel like you're prepared for something and then you realize that you're really not. And it's really demoralizing. It can be really demoralizing.
Okay, we have time for 2 more questions. We have one in the front here, and I think we have one in the back. So.
Hi, Nicole. I was also really struck with your comment about are we gatekeepers or waymakers, and as well about how your second grade teacher telling you you were smart was kind of the first time that you heard that, and really, as you said, paved the way for you to believe that and to kind of pursue that. I work really closely with our recruitment outreach team, and we go out into the high schools and we work with students, and we often experience the gatekeepers in terms of who's brought to us as someone who might be interested in coming to Green River, and we also I think struggle with whether the student is brought to us and they believe that they are able or capable or ready to go to college or not. We have a lot of students that haven't been told that as early in life as you might have been, and have continually been told that this isn't their path. And how do we become waymakers to be able to get that message to them that we know that we can help them come to Green River and figure out those pieces that are maybe preventing them from coming in terms of the finances and their family commitments and work and that kind of thing, when for the rest of the time they've been in K-12 they haven't gotten that message.
So I think the answer is a 2-part answer. I think the first is working with those counselors and other gatekeepers and waymakers to work with them on their own implicit bias and their understanding of students' potential, because they're the people who, if a kid says, well, I'm thinking about college, I don't know, they could either say, yeah, I think that's a great idea, or like, nah, I think you should maybe do something, go to technical school or get a job, or, so I think talking to the counselors and the teachers in K-12 so that they can also be on the same page. So you're not the only person. When you come in, that's not the first time they hear you are capable. And I think the other thing is asking to see everyone, because sometimes counselors or teachers self-select a group of students who they think has potential, and then say, I want to talk to everyone. I want to see the student body so that I can relate to all of them how important it is and that, that they are capable. When I was talking to a woman, and she was saying that kids who don't go to college because they don't want to. And I said, she said, I know because I saw the recruiters just like everyone else. They came to my school. I said, but were you in AP classes? Were you in college prep classes? She said, yes. I said, they talked to you. I said, my friends and my cousins were not, and nobody talked to them. And so I think just that very small thing of saying, I want to see everyone, not just to the people you've designated as college prep or college ready, but the people who in the book I talk about the kids who are in the classes who are just passing time, playing dominoes and cards instead of learning. Those kids also need the message.
Great. We have one more question in the back, I think.
I'll keep mine short. My name is Chitra Solomonson. I teach physics here at Green River. And for the last couple of years, I've been teaching mostly the engineering physics. And in some ways, it's the flip side of what Maricela asked. I know there are students who are underprepared, who need academic help. But I also mourn for those students who are doing well, and for some reason, they just leave. And it's too late. I don't know why they left. We can't do an exit interview. And I wanted to hear your ideas about how we can use, how we can bring together as a college the support services we offer and the instruction in the classroom in a more intimate way so we can actually keep tabs on these students if there are flags early on, or I don't even want to call them flags because sometimes they're unexpected things that can happen to anybody. But to be able to recognize that and hold their hand long enough that they can finish the journey.
I think that's a perfect way to end our conversation, or this piece of the conversation. I do think it's about redesigning and rethinking the student experience and walking and thinking about how students are perceiving their experience and where are their touch points, where do we see them, where might, if it's not in the classroom, like in your classroom, where are other points where they might be interacting, where we can get the message to them that if they are struggling or if they are having trouble, that there is a lifeline, and making it visible and clear throughout the campus. I think this campus is gorgeous and beautiful, but if the students who are struggling don't know where to go to receive help or to talk to someone, and it's not intuitive, then they will go elsewhere, drop out, manage it themselves. And for me, when I was struggling, when I got to graduate school, because I was struggling, I went back to Howard and I said, what is this? I told my former professor, I said, what is this? These people, I don't know what's going on. There's no black people. We're not reading about any black people anymore. The professors aren't that nice. And I was considering leaving. And he said, don't leave. Don't give up your scholarship money, first of all. He said, and this is what you do. But I feel like I wish I would have had the resources on campus and knew where I could go to receive that kind of advice. Because if it wasn't for him, I would have maybe made a different choice. So I think really thinking about how we redesign the student experience so that all students, whether they are remedial and need a lot of attention or are doing academic, but they have other pressures that they're facing, how do we make sure that all those people and their experiences receive that kind of support? So I do think it's about integration and redesign.
Thank you.
So I'm mindful of time. Wait, we're going to get feedback from each other. I want to thank Nicole for the keynote and taking some questions. You make our campus so great. We're taking a 15-minute break now, adhering to many contractual requirements. And in 15 minutes, though, we're going to be reconvening, and there's something I'm really struck by in terms of the questions and the information that Nicole is sharing with us. Belonging, a sense of belonging, seeing oneself. So oftentimes we think that there's something complex about how we need to solve the problems, whether it's at a policy level or whether it's at a micro level. You mentioned it's connections. It's relationships. You said, well, it's a college, but it's still about people. That's true in the classroom and in our offices. So with that in mind, after our 15-minute break, we'll be having a student panel, which Nicole will be interviewing and having conversations about, various topics with them about. And then there's going to be opportunity for audience to ask questions as well. Stay tuned. There's more to come. 15 minutes, everybody. Thank you.